Good Saturday morning, everyone. Today on Perspectives, the 2020 hurricane season didn't waste any time. 3 named storms and the Gulf Coast already weathering its first storm of the year. Now, Tropical Storm Cristobal has come and gone, but it also quickly ushered us here on the Gulf Coast into the start of the 2020 hurricane season. With its wind gust, heavy rainfall, and coastal flooding, Cristobal was not shy in making his presence felt. Cristobal was an excellent reminder that we all need to be prepared when any storm system threatens the Gulf Coast. Now, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, this year will be another busy one. Government weather officials estimate the season will be above average. As many as 10 hurricanes are predicted this year, with 3 to 6 becoming major hurricanes. To learn more about the 2020 season, as well as the challenges brought by the COVID-19 pandemic, let's check out this video produced by NOAA.
On May 21st, NOAA issued its 2020 seasonal hurricane outlook for the Atlantic and Eastern Pacific basins. For the Atlantic, a busy hurricane season is predicted. Here at NOAA, we're predicting a 60% chance that the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season will be above normal. There's a 30% chance of the season being near normal and only a 10% chance of it being below normal. Overall, this year's outlook reflects several climate factors that are conducive to increased hurricane activity, including the ongoing high activity era that has been in place since 1995. We are predicting ENSO neutral or La Niña conditions, along with warmer than average sea surface temperatures in the tropical Atlantic Ocean and Caribbean Sea, coupled with reduced vertical wind shear, weaker tropical Atlantic trade winds, and an enhanced West African monsoon. Hurricane preparedness is critically important for the 2020 hurricane season, just as it is every year. Keep in mind, you may need to adjust any preparedness actions based on the latest health and safety guidelines from the Centers for Disease Control and your local officials. As we know, it takes just one storm to cause significant damage from high winds, storm surge, and flooding as tropical systems move inland after striking coastal communities. NOAA works closely with our partners to help emergency managers and communities make targeted decisions to support public safety. More than 80 million people in the U.S. live in areas that could be impacted by a hurricane, and only a fraction of those live along the immediate coast. Now is the time to get prepared. Visit the National Hurricane Center's website at hurricanes.gov throughout the season to stay on top of any watches and warnings. Be sure to visit FEMA's website, ready.gov, for additional hurricane preparedness tips. Hurricane preparation starts at home. Start today and have a safe hurricane season. Together, we can build a more weather-ready nation.
We thank NOAA for that information and, of course, planning hurricane evacuation routes and shelters in a pandemic. Well, that's a very formidable task. Joining us on Perspectives today are Fox 10 News Chief Meteorologist Jason Smith, who is, of course, no stranger to bringing you the latest information when a tropical system strikes. Also here this morning, Jenny Gary, Deputy Director of the Baldwin County Emergency Management Agency, and Dr. Keith Blackwell of the Coastal Weather Research Center at the University of South Alabama. A lot to talk about this morning, especially in the age of COVID-19. Perspectives continues after this break. Joining us now, our Chief Meteorologist, Jason Smith. And Jason joins us by Skype this morning to talk about the 2020 hurricane season. Jason, of course, thank you for joining us. Now, it happens every year in the month of May, near the end of the month, the forecast is released. And tell us, what goes through the mind and the being of a chief meteorologist when this time of the year happens again?
You know, this year it's especially concerning. Every year you're thinking, okay, we need to be prepared because this could be the year we get something that's really difficult for us to deal with as a community. But with the COVID-19 situation, you know, hey, we've had some storms that have come really close to hitting us directly or have hit us directly but hit certain parts of the area and not hit other parts of the area. If we look back at Hurricane Ivan, it hit more over towards the Panhandle, the damage in eastern Baldwin County, but not not so much in western Baldwin County or in the Mobile area. We've had Hurricane Katrina, which grazed really the western sections of our area, but was a devastating storm for our neighbors to the west. And then Hurricane Michael, off to the east of us. We've had some big ones, real close calls for places like Mobile and Daphne and Fairhope and the heart of our area. And with the COVID-19 situation going on, that's what's at the forefront of my mind is we really don't want this to be the year that we have to contend with a major storm. And with the prediction of there being an above average season, that's certainly something that has our attention.
And that's one of the questions, because definitely COVID-19 is another player in this picture. When you hear the number of the storms breaking down 13 to 19 as far as named storms, but then 6 possible storms, at least 3 to 6 could be major hurricanes. How concerned are you, and how concerned should we be about those numbers?
Well, anytime you're going to have an above average season, potentially, that just means the odds are greater that one could affect us. The predictions are for the entire Atlantic basin, so it doesn't mean we're going to see 6 storms here. But the more of them that are out there, the more active the season is, the odds are more so that there could be a storm that affects us directly. Now, there are a lot of variables that are involved in this. The predictions are up because of the La Nina pattern and also because of the water temperatures being above average. But there's also something that's very important, and that is steering flow. And we'll have to see where those ridges set up and where the flow patterns are to see if we're going to be in line for the storms, especially as we get into the most busy part of the season, which is in August and September and early October.
Having 2 named storms in May before June 1st, what does that mean for the season when you have that type of occurrence?
That's something that is a bit of a concern, but we've had that. This is the 5th year in a row we've seen an early system form up. Sometimes we've seen systems form up in May, and then June's real quiet, and July's real quiet, and then it starts to get active in August. But certainly our numbers are up. It's showing that things are already primed for some tropical development, so it has our attention. And, with it being a situation with the coronavirus, too, even more so, people are going to have to think long and hard about their plan. Just the idea of you may have relatives that you would normally evacuate to go spend time with, and they may be saying, hey, don't come because we're worried about the virus. We've all seen that in our worlds. So certainly something to think about. What's your plan? Has it changed? This gets a little more complicated.
Very good tips there, Jason. Jason, in my lifetime and in your lifetime, we've seen an evolution of this technology where predicting storms and following where they could go and where they may go has really become impressive now when you look at it. But is there something missing that you'd like to see still, that we're hoping we'll get to that next stage of how to really pinpoint these things?
Just looking at weather as a meteorologist, yes, when we have a jet stream in play and we're getting fronts, we're very accurate. We're still a little behind on picking up exactly where pop-up showers and thunderstorms are going to pop up on a summertime afternoon. But tropical forecasting has gotten way, way better. And, sometimes you hear in the public, hey, y'all don't really know where that thing's going to go. Well, if the steering flow is fairly certain, we have a really good idea. And we also can tell if we think it's going to get stronger or get weaker. It's not perfect, but we've gotten a lot better. Where the science is lacking is when we get in a weak steering flow environment. And it's these storms that stall and they drift, and the track can be off, and the margin for error is greater. That's what we're really working on, is how to hone in on the forecast and the predictions when we do have a weak steering flow environment and we have a slow moving tropical storm or hurricane.
And Jason, as usual, we always have 1 or 2 names that we're wondering why, and why is this one now the one for the letter N, Nana? Now, a lot of us have Nanas in our families, and we think about Nana in a very loving way. Why did they pick Nana of all?
The names are picked by the folks in Miami at the National Hurricane Center, and the names are boy, girl, all the way down through the line so that it's fair. And they pick names for all the different cultures and nationalities and languages that are being spoken throughout the Atlantic Basin. So you have all kinds of names, and a lot of times folks will say, why do y'all pick those names? Well, we don't pick them. We're not one of those channels that just makes up our own names for storms. But when it comes comes to tropical stuff, there's one standard, and all the names are picked by other people besides us. But I don't know why. I guess they were really fond of their Nana.
Wow. Well, as we leave and our folks, and we're talking to you, Jason, at this time, what's the last message you want to leave with your viewers?
Just to be very vigilant, to have a game plan. This year is different because of the COVID-19 situation. We're all a little more vulnerable, perhaps economically anyway. And so, what's your plan as far as being able to get what you need, cash, prescriptions? Where are you going to evacuate to? Are you going to ride it out? You need to have those conversations around the dinner table. If people still eat together as a family, or just in the living room, now, so that you can come up with a game plan. This year's going to be a little different. It may be more difficult to acquire certain items. There may be some things that you got during the coronavirus in preparation for sheltering in place. You can use some of those items, so that may be a plus too. But the main thing is, it's a little different this year. We really don't need a bad storm, but if we do, you need to be prepared.
Jason Smith, our Fox 10 Chief Meteorologist, we thank you so much for your time this morning.
It's good being with you, Eric. Good to see you.
All right, Jason Smith. And up next, Dr. Keith Blackwell, a tropical weather specialist at South Alabama's Coastal Weather Research Center. Perspectives continues in just a moment. And joining us now, Dr. Keith Blackwell. He is a tropical weather specialist at our Coastal Weather Research Center. Thank you this morning for being a part of this discussion. As you well know, the season has been interesting so far, and it's only the first few days in the month of June. Let me ask you first, Dr. Blackwell, the numbers that came out saying that a 60% chance of an above normal season, 13 to 19 named storms, 6 to 10 could become hurricanes, and 3 to 6 could become major hurricanes. When you hear that information, and of course you are weighing this against years of other seasons that you've evaluated and taken us through, how does this sound to you when you hear these kinds of numbers for the 2020 season?
Well, it sounds like that the early season indicators are kind of flashing green for hurricanes this year, and it does indeed appear that way because the information I've been looking at as well indicates that there are several favorable conditions developing in the tropical Atlantic and also in the eastern Pacific Ocean for hurricanes in the Atlantic this year. And we already see storms developing early, like we saw two storms, Arthur and Bertha. They were in the Atlantic off the East Coast. But the other storm, Cristobal, is coming from an East Pacific disturbance that made landfall, a tropical storm that made landfall a couple of days ago. And if we look at the conditions already so early this year, we're seeing some pretty favorable, a pretty favorable environment developing. But that, just because you have early season activity doesn't mean that you're going to have a lot of activity during the peak of the season, which is usually around August and September timeframe. So things can change by then and become less favorable. But right now, it appears that we're going to have a fairly active season this year. I agree with NOAA in their prediction, and also Colorado State in April came out with an active prediction as well.
When you look at numbers like that, and of course comparing that to years of doing this as a tropical weather specialist, is there a concern about the warmer years that we seem to be documenting now? I think the last, 3 years, we've been above normal from the previous year, each of these last 3, with the temperature of our days and of course the summer seasons. Is that having an effect, you think, on the numbers that we're hearing this year?
Well, I think we're in a very active cycle. We're in the very active phase of a natural cycle that's responsible for much of this enhanced activity. It was like somebody flipped the switch back in 1995, and all of a sudden we started seeing active hurricane seasons one after the other, and we've been in that cycle now for about 25 years. And so most of the seasons since 1995 have been active. But before that, between 1970 and 1994, most of the seasons were very inactive. But before that, back in the 50s and 60s and even in the 1940s, we had abnormally active seasons back then. So there's about a 60 to 70 year cycle, it appears, that where the North Atlantic becomes warmer than normal for multiple decades and then cools down for a few decades. And right now we're well into a warm phase in the North Atlantic. And so I think that's the main reason we're seeing such active hurricane seasons. And who knows when it's going to flip to the cold side, but I'm pretty sure that at some point, it might be this decade, it might be the decade following, we're going to flip back into the cold phase of this, what they call Atlantic multi-decadal oscillation, and we'll see less active hurricane seasons in general.
Dr. Blackwell, take about a minute here as we wrap up and let our viewers know what you would recommend to them with this being the consideration of what's ahead for 2020.
Well, I would say certainly look to the south. During the summer, people on the Gulf Coast look to the south because they know that tropical weather systems are going to start arriving from the Caribbean and tropical Atlantic. And so I'd say it's not a bad idea at all to go ahead and start preparing for potential hurricane activity close to home. It's better to be prepared early than to wait until there's a storm coming and all of a sudden all the grocery stores are sold out of batteries and water and things of that sort. So it's good to stock up early, even if we may not be threatened by a storm this year, just in case.
Prepared, right, better be prepared. Dr. Keith Blackwell, we thank you so much for being a part of the program this morning. Our tropical weather specialist from our Coastal Weather Research Center, Dr. Keith Blackwell. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Keith Blackwell. Now, one word that's key to our discussion this morning is preparation. When we come back, Jenny Gary, Deputy Director of Baldwin County's Emergency Management Agency, tells us why. Perspectives will be right back. And joining us now, the Deputy Director of the Baldwin County Emergency Management Agency, Jenny Gary. We thank you so much for being a part of the program this morning. Now, Jenny, the numbers are out, and they're now predicting a 60% chance of an above normal season with 13 to 19 named storms and, scarily, I guess you could say, 3 to 6 major hurricanes in the Atlantic and Gulf region. When you hear the information every year coming out, what happens in your office when the release is made?
Hi, good morning, and thank you for having me, Eric. We do pay very close attention to those predictions as they come out each and every year for our tropical storm outlook. And I will tell you that our planning and our preparation are things that we do continuously throughout the year, regardless of what the predictions may be. So we are monitoring it very closely, and it is so far proving to be quite active. However, we know that it only takes one storm to change the landscape of our community.
How difficult is it for you each year, because you're in the fastest growing county in the state and the numbers keep increasing every year and the different pockets of population going and developing around the county? Is it a difficult job every year where you've got to inform a whole brand new bunch of folk?
You are so correct. So Baldwin County, we're very fortunate in that we are a great place to live, and many people are pouring into our area. Many of those new residents don't necessarily have experience with tropical weather or hurricanes. So it's a daunting task sometimes to make sure that we are reaching out to all of those in our community and providing education to all of our newcomers. And it's been quite some time since we've had a direct impact. Another concern that we have to overcome is complacency. So we do work very hard with our community partners to help make sure that we can emphasize that message of preparedness and talk about the things that you need to do for planning appropriately to keep your family safe throughout hurricane season, all through the year.
And of course, this year a little different now, 2020, when we talk about the COVID-19 pandemic. How are you working that into the sharing of information to make sure people are prepared?
So I will tell you that in our shelter operations and plans, many of those plans in the past have also included infectious disease outbreaks. Anytime that you have individuals in close proximity or sheltered in those ways for periods of time, there's a risk for the spread of disease. So coronavirus and COVID-19 has really made us pay very close attention and think about more ways that we can help protect individuals should the need for sheltering occur. So some of the things that we talk about may be looking at ways that we can shelter in new ways, allowing for social distancing. Now, we do know that sheltering is last resort, in the sense that we really want our community members to take time and make plans for your family and know where you would evacuate to well in advance of the threat of a storm. So the shelters that are located in Baldwin County are known as a shelter of last resort. And that's because much of our area in Baldwin County is coastal, and there's a lot of threat and risk affiliated with flooding. So we want to make sure that we get people into areas that are safe. And so what you can expect if you do have to go to a shelter, that you will need to bring some of your essential items with you. There'll be some changes and there'll be some rules in place to help keep everyone safe.
If you would,
some additional items.
I was going to say, if you would, give us where we should go to get that information if we reside in Baldwin County.
Absolutely. So I will tell you that we have tremendous information on our website at baldwincountyal.gov. You will find the shelter locations, and you'll also find the list of items that you need to bring with you. Two of the most important that's going to be on that list will be your medications as well as your prescription eyeglasses. Now, due to COVID-19, we're also recommending that you bring face masks and that you also bring bottled water. So those will be some of the key things that you'll want to bring with you. But I do highly encourage that you make plans outside of those shelters, because sometimes those shelters are not going to be as comfortable as you would be in a family member or a friend's home if you evacuate to an area that is safer.
That's understandable. But Jenny Gary, we thank you so much for being a part of the program this morning, our Deputy Director of the Baldwin County Emergency Management Agency. And of course, we're all wishing for a safe hurricane season this year, and one that's maybe more quiet than the predictions and the forecast. But the bottom line, as you said, is to be prepared, and that will make a difference for you and your family. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Once again, Jenny Gary. Now, don't forget, as she mentioned, there are resources available to keep you informed. You can receive alerts and warnings through Baldwin County's new mass notification system by texting Alert Baldwin to the number 888-777. You can also download the free Baldwin County EMA app as well, and be on the lookout for the BCEMA's Preparedness Expo coming up. Well, if you haven't already, download the Fox 10 News app as well. Now, that can have a way you can stay on top of all of the breaking severe weather alerts this hurricane season. It is free for both Android and Apple devices, and you can also get it on your Roku, Apple TV, and Fire TV as well. Just scan the QR code. Well, please join us here next Saturday morning at 9 for Perspectives as we continue to discuss important issues and seek solutions. By the way, if you have any ideas of topics that you'd like for us to discuss, just address it to us at perspectives@fox10tv.com. I'm Eric Reynolds. Have a great week.